There's a magic wand. What does that thing do? I'm gonna fall over. Wait, hold on. It says no. I don't know.
We'll just have them hold it regular. Here, we need you, Captain Morgan. We can't get it to flip sideways, so it's going to have to be held like this. Okay, you can do that.
For the defense.
Trying to minimize the.
Why do we have a small screen here?
But he was able to bring it back.
Oh, you look good. All right, we're live. We're live.
Are you ready, Doug?
Okay, going live. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're live.
Okay, so we go back in on cross-examination of, gosh, what was his name? There's so many notes. Apley. And we go back in and they go back into why he turned his body cam off, because he got mad and he did not want to record the mayhem, was his actual words, the mayhem. And then body cams are made to record events, and you chose to turn yours off right when you believed an event was about to happen. And then they also go into why you have a body cam, why police officers have body cams to record events. He said that he would, or to also record if agents are making correct judgments. He said he offered, or he volunteered to have a body cam, and that was moved on through. Now we go into Engel, and he asked if observing people through a scope is common practice. It was objected to. He rephrased it a few times. It was still objected to. He said, were you ever trained to observe people through a rifle scope? And the guy said no. And then they were asking, was that gun pointed downrange? These people wearing body armor, helmets, and carrying rifles. He tried to go into, do they look militant? Do they look military? It was objected to. They wouldn't let it out there. Then he goes into, are you familiar with the 4 rules of firearm safety? At this point, the witness is not answering the question, but then asking him what his point to the question is, instead of just answering the question. Well, I don't see where you're going with this, he says. And he's all, well, you know, like, always keep your firearm on safety, blah, you know. And he's like, do you know that you should never point your rifle at something that you were not prepared to destroy? That was objected to, but at least the jury heard it, and he finished. Perez got up and asked if on the morning of the 11th, if there was a briefing, job duties given for the day. He said yes, and he said on the 12th, was there a morning briefing? He said no. He said Briscoe was his supervisor, and so he said, so anything you were to do on the 12th, you knew that you were supposed to do that on the night of the 11th? And he said yes, which is really hard to believe because they didn't even know what was going to happen on the 12th, and so that's interesting. Jackson just goes back into a lot of the body cam stuff. Was asking if he was issued a ballistic helmet and if other agents were issued ballistic helmets, because he said so in his direct examination. And then he was asked why he wasn't wearing his ballistic helmet, and he said he didn't have it with him. And then he was asked why other agents weren't wearing their ballistic helmets. You know, they came prepared with all of their weapons, but they didn't have their ballistic helmets. Kind of goes to say, if you were in fear of your life, would you not have your helmet on? Then Todd Leventhal gets up and he tries to enter a picture of the ICP. And it was the, asking the guy, and now this Ranger Apley, he was actually brought in to protect the cattle and the ICP. He was security officer for the cattle and the ICP. Leventhal pulls up this picture. We don't get to see it. The jury doesn't get to see it. And he asks, is this an accurate picture of the ICP? Actually, first he pulls up an old picture and circles an area, and he says, what is this area? And he says, natural ground in the area. And so he goes, huh. Pulls up the picture of the ICP, and he says, this area look right to you? There was an objection to it. He tried to put it into evidence. There was objection to it because it wasn't relevant. He argues that it is relevant. It's a picture of the ICP, and he wants to go into some things that are pictured in this picture. Myrie says that's exactly what we're objecting to, and she doesn't allow it to be entered into evidence. Then, when the government goes back to redirect after, it was asked, was it illegal to have your weapon on you in the wash? And this is after he was told by Metro to put his long gun away. And he said, no, I am allowed to carry my weapon when I feel it is needed. So basically here they had Metro tell him to put their long guns away. He went down in the wash, got his long gun out, and started to work down there after he was told to put it away. Then he asked if he was in fear of Dan Levin, the Metro, who had their backs to the wash while they were walking away, and he said yes. Next, the government calls Tony Szymanski. She is a BLM Communication Center manager for many different states. They run plates for dispatch for BLM, for Fish and Game, for Park Service in multiple states, so they're like a command center for those agencies. She's a computer aid dispatch. She uses different tools daily on the job. When she was first told she was going to be involved in Gold Butte, her role was just going to be counting cattle and keeping track of law enforcement officers and the other non-law enforcement officers that were working on the project. She says that's like saying this officer's going to this area, they make sure they get there safely, they make sure they get back safely, and keeping count on the cattle. She got there on March 28th. She said that her duties did change drastically. They only brought certain equipment to do that cattle count. They didn't bring all the equipment that they normally used for running plates, for dispatch, for all of these things. So when her role changed to looking up people, the bolos, the running license plates, she didn't have the adequate equipment to do her job. She did say she had a team of 5 or 6. Oh no, the day shift was 4 and the night shift was 1, so she had a team of 5. On the night of the 11th, they started to take down the command center. They took it down to half, and they sent half home, and so that left 3. And then one of those 3 had to go home because she was not fit to work. She was too stressed out. And that was before the morning. She said when she packed up, she took the primary and secondary computer and kept working from Las Vegas because of threats all the way up until April 22nd. Then we go through a lot of her, what she does basically is listen to the radio and type in the information so that everything has a timestamp, and she is the one that would call Metro or call the Nevada Highway Patrol and communicate back and forth. She also communicated with, what was her name? The undercover agent. I want to say it's Rachel, but let's see. And I don't see her name. Robin Kirkland. So she was the one, and she said she uses Google Chat to communicate with Robin, and Robin was with the FBI at the time. So she was not on the, she was not on site, and she was communicating with her. She said sometime on the 12th, when they were packing up the last of the stuff, they realized that none of the radio information was being recorded, which it normally is being recorded. Like, they record it manually, but there's also an audio recording. At some point between the night of the 11th and the morning of the 12th, someone unplugged the hard drive, or the hard drive became unplugged, and they didn't record any of the radio communication on the day of the 12th. In cross-examination, they asked some things about shredding documents. She was the one that shredded all the documents. She said that she was pulling out information and printing up information from government agencies, and that's why they had to shred the documents afterwards, because they were sensitive documents for people who, only certain people with the right clearance can view these, and they're sensitive because they have names and numbers and things that shouldn't be out. So she was shredding documents the entire time, and she was the one that shredded documents on the night of the 11th and the morning of the 12th. Engel brought up, she had mentioned that she had undercovers in the crowd, and that is why they did not deploy the less than lethal. And they were asked if she knew how many. She didn't know. That was coming from Robin Kirkham. Just went into how the information was coming to her. She does not recall that anyone said that they saw someone pointing a weapon. Jackson goes up and asks if she had training in the FBI or law enforcement to do the duties. She said yes, but they did not teach her to set up the system. She learned that from experience. John Foley oversaw the communication. ComSci, he was non-law enforcement BLM. He was in the room with her. The system was not set up to reach police or FBI. She had cell phones to do that. And that the hard drive was not attached. And that they were communicating with Robin Kirkham over Google Chat. And there was FBI special agents in the crowd, basically. So we go back in. I think they're going to call another witness because we finished with this witness. And, I'm really disappointed with any of the lawyers, because not one lawyer went up there and asked, was Dan Love ever in the communication building? Who had access to unplug that hard drive? These are the questions that needed to be asked, and not one of the lawyers did it. What we saw in there the last half of the day was pretty rough, because here they're saying a picture of the BLM's ICP site is not relevant to this case. How is that possible? They're saying, they go out and they say, well, all of our radio transmissions were not recorded because the hard drive was unplugged, but nobody's asked who's responsible for that. That was not brought up. She also brought up that she, as well, did not sleep in her car over the whole night of the 11th into the 12th, and that one of her agents that she had to send home was so stressed out because and unfit for duty. She didn't say why, but she was stressed out and unfit for duty and had to be sent home. So a normal team of 4 people, 2 people were doing the job. And they're supposedly kept up with what they could and only recorded the relevant things, and nothing else was recorded, so we don't even know what the non-relevant things were. So we come back tomorrow with a new witness, and they didn't say who that was, so we'll see tomorrow.
Any word on Dennis Michael Lynch?
Dennis Michael Lynch most likely will not be here this week. I hear that there's just FBI agents coming, possibly. I don't really know, but that's what I heard. Didn't look like Dennis Michael Lynch will be here this week, possibly next.
Thank you.
So are they planning on having court all the way through Friday?
Fridays are always dark.